everyone, and welcome to ProWritingAid 101 for business writers. I'm Micah McGuire, ProWritingAid's B2B Digital Marketing Manager, and today I am here with Tom Wilde, our Head of Client Solutions. It is wonderful to see everybody here today. I hope you are all having a wonderful day so far. For today's agenda, we are going to be going over some of the most important features for business writers. So we're going to be covering things like our real-time checker and our goals feature. We're going to be diving into some of the most useful reports, including the summary report, the readability report, the style report, and the sticky sentences report. And then we're going to be going over a few of our favorite tools for business writers like the style guide. And if we have time, we're going to try to cover the Chrome extension as well. Ultimately, we really want this to be driven by what you guys would like to know. So please, anytime during the walkthrough, feel free to put your questions into the Q&A box. We are saving 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the session to make sure we can answer everyone's questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. But if we are not able to get to your question, please feel free to email it to hello, HELLO, at ProWritingAid.com. Just throw that you are a member of one of our Business 101 sessions in the subject line, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. All right, Tom, I think we can start with the walkthrough.
Great. Thank you, Micah, and welcome, everybody. It's great to have you with us. And as Micah said, let's use this opportunity to its full potential. So start your questions coming whenever they pop into your mind throughout the demo. We've got quite a lot to cover, but we always like to keep a bit of time back for those questions, anything we don't cover during the actual walkthrough. So we're going to start off tonight by having a look at the web editor. So it's one of our core integrations. We have many different integrations. Let me share my screen so I can show you exactly what that looks like. And if you're a new user to ProWritingAid, you logged in, you've probably seen the web editor, and you've probably seen this kind of UI, this user interface, wherever you're using ProWritingAid, to be honest, because we try and make it uniform. We try and make it have the same look and feel, whether you're using ProWritingAid here in the web editor or in the Word add-in, in the Google Docs add-on. And in the Chrome extension too, you can reach this point and run the kind of reports we're going to show you this evening. So what I've got here is just a sample email that we've created in the web editor interface. And you can see a few different buttons and things you can press. So let's walk through some of those in a kind of fairly methodical way. I want to start first and foremost by looking at settings, because it's really important that you're setting your account up correctly for your kind of writing. Writing's a really broad subject. Everybody does it differently, and your audiences are all very different. With that in mind, you may want to set your English type to a particular one. So in ProWritingAid, you can choose between General English. General English means that anything goes. Okay, so it's not going to pick up any discrepancies or differences, between UK or US English, for example. But you can select British English, US, Australian, or Canadian too. Next, you can see writing style. So what kind of audience are you writing for? What kind of document are you writing? Is it academic? Is it business? Is it creative? And then let's drill down a little bit further and look at the actual document type. So you can select from a whole range here. You can see the headings. So here's business, and I've got 10 or so different options under business, and we're building and increasing those all the time. What difference do they make? Well, you're going to see subtle differences in the analysis that you run, particularly when we look at goals, some of the metrics in a second. I'll show you how that changes. But it's just helping you to focus a little bit more on the particular type of writing that you're doing. All right.
Because ultimately, Tom, aren't these kind of pulled from our different analyses and things like that? So we've got a corpus of business emails that we've analyzed. We have a corpus of sales business emails that we've analyzed, all of that, and that has gone into building our goals feature.
Yeah, absolutely right. So we're comparing your writing against kind of published writing or writing samples that we've gathered, millions of sentences that we've analyzed over the 10 or so years we've been doing this. Okay. Let's dive into some of the reports, because that's where the fun starts to happen. And don't forget, right, ProWritingAid, it's a little bit like having an editor on your shoulder. Okay, now a lot of what ProWritingAid is going to tell you isn't necessarily a case of it's telling you you've got to do this, right? Writing has a degree of subjectivity in it. So it's going to highlight things that are incorrect or possibly incorrect, like spelling mistakes, but it's also going to go a long way possible improvements you could make, but it's up to you to make those changes. It doesn't force anything, okay? So it's not going to make changes for you. The place to start in all this is the real-time checker right here in the top left-hand corner. Turn it on, and it's immediately, like I said, it's on your shoulder. It's immediately starting to look for those issues in your writing. It's looking for grammar, spelling, punctuation, style, and passive voice issues. And you can see it's already counted 32 issues in this one short document. Okay, so I can see very quickly that I've got some work to do. Now, in a moment, we're going to look at how to make the changes that, or accept the changes that ProWritingAid is telling me to do, or reject them. First of all, though, I want to draw your attention to our goals feature, which Micah mentioned. So goals is a relatively new feature to ProWritingAid. It's a really, really important tool, though, because it helps provide a degree of measurement. So we actually believe, we take a scientific approach to writing. We think you can measure writing. It's not as much of an art as people think. If you can break it down into the constituent elements, measure each, then you can really focus on what to improve. And goals helps you do that. So you can see here, I've got my style as general business. And these are the goals it's telling me are important for a general business style. So I've got things like grammar, spelling, and style. I've got sentence length, business jargon, readability grade. Some of those will mean something to you, some of them may not. The two differences here are some of them are in gold and some of them are in green. Now, here's my target. Grammar, spelling, and style. I should be aiming for 80% or higher in that category. And actually, I'm hitting 48%. So I've got a lot of work to do in grammar, spelling, and style. Sentence length, I'm doing pretty well. I could do better. My sentence length target, look at this bubble, is between 12 and 20 words per sentence. And I'm hitting 19.3, so I'm just under the upper limit. So it's marked as green. Green is good. So immediately I'm starting to get a picture for the areas that I should improve and the areas I'm doing okay. Business jargon, obviously really relevant to business writers. Readability grade, also really relevant. And we'll dig into this in a little bit more detail later on. But let's have a quick look at what happens if I change my writing, my document type, sorry. So if I go to a sales email, it's going to recalculate those goals. And actually, it's going to give me other goals to aim for. So you can see immediately I've got positivity. Okay, really important part of a good sales email is, you know, the language you're using. Is it positive language? Likewise, question count. Am I using questions? Am I asking questions and therefore trying to elicit a response? Am I using words that might get caught by a spam filter? So you can see there are some things in here. Oh, glue index is one of my favorites. We'll come on to that later. You can see already how the document style setting has an impact on goals.
And that's even within kind of the same sort of document type, right? So if we change to, say, the general business email format, those goals would change again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. Okay, so we've got an idea of the goals, the areas I need to focus on. Let's get into the detail of actually making some changes. Now, if I open the improvements tab in the sidebar, it lists all of the possible issues in my document in a kind of chronological order. Now I can even navigate through those here in the sidebar where I can also filter. So I can select whether I just want to look at grammar, maybe discount spelling and passive voice, just look at grammar for the moment. Okay, so I can work through kind of thematically, or I can actually work through the document just from the very top. So I don't have to work in the sidebar. I can work through the document. And you can see immediately by hovering over an underlined word or phrase, a pop-up appears and tells me what I need to do or what the advice is. So here, the scourge of business writing is a passive voice. Okay, it's not necessarily incorrect, but we do highlight the passive voice because it's overused. In the passive voice, you're swapping the position of the subject and the object in the sentence, and you're making the verb construction more complex. Now, we tend to overuse it in business writing because we think it makes us sound more important. We also, it's a good way of not attributing any responsibility to the subject, which might be a deliberate ploy. However, our readers will thank us if we use the active voice more than the passive voice. It's easier to understand. The cognitive load on your reader is lower. So we highlight the passive voice. In this situation, we're actually able to give you some possible alternatives and turn it into the active voice. If I'm still not sure what the difference is there, and I can click on this little information icon here, and it opens a contextual learning window. So there's learning built into the tool. You're going to build your skills and your capability, and you're going to reinforce any learning you've done previously. Here we've got a full explanation. We open that again. Full explanation of the difference between the passive and the active voice. I've also got a little video embedded here that is Jackie Chan explaining, or using Jackie Chan to explain the differences between the active and the passive voice. We try and make that fun and engaging too. So you're learning as you go. You're going to make that change and move on. Now you still, with that change, I just clicked anywhere in the kind of highlighted teal area. I could just click there, or I can also click on this arrow, which will automatically move me to the next suggestion. So this is a misspelt word. You'll notice that there are some options beneath the change as well. So with a misspelt word, I have got the option to add it to my dictionary. So maybe it's not misspelt. Maybe it's a deliberately misspelt word because it's a custom term I'm using. So I might want to add that to my dictionary, and you can build your own personal dictionary in this way. You might want to ignore it. Okay, and if you ignore it, it will remember your ignores, so it won't highlight again when you rerun the document. You'll notice with some of these as well, let me see if I can grab one here. So we've got an option to disable this rule. Now, I wouldn't recommend you disable the rule for the simple reason that disable is permanent. Okay, so you won't be able to undisable. We can do it in the back end, but just think carefully before you disable any rules. Usually the ignore is sufficient.
Especially now that the tool remembers all of your ignores, it's much more useful to actually ignore those terms. You'll notice that your goals toolbar will change in accordance with that. So let's say you have maybe industry jargon that you have to have. Maybe you're in a very, very technical field. If you just click ignore on anything that is recognized as, say, a spelling error. So let's say you have maybe a long chemical name, something like that, that PWA is picking up spelling error, then you hit ignore. Your grammar, your goals check will take that into account as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And you'll see as we work through some of these, as Micah mentioned, you'll see the scores, the percentages that are affected by the words I'm changing, depending on the category, they increase. So it's dynamic, it's working all the time. Okay, so let's make that change and move on. It is a misspelling. I'm going to change it to the correct version. Okay, thus far, this is a great readability, and we really don't need to use a term like thus far, okay? It doesn't add anything extra usually to the sentence. So let's make it easier on our reader and remove that. Let's change the majority to most. And you'll see my grammar, spelling, and style score just went up to 51. Now it's back down to 49 because actually one of my changes has actually introduced another change. So we're just going to remove that word. There we go, made another change. Okay, and now it's identified a passive voice example. So let's make that change too. So you can see again, it's dynamic. You may make a change and that may introduce another recommended change as a result. And so it's working all the time, but you can see here my score is steadily increasing. Okay, so we get the idea of how the real-time checker works. Let's dig in a bit deeper to some of the other reports. And the best place to start for this is the summary report. This is kind of like the overarching report. It's a really detailed report. It takes a few seconds to run, as you can see. And it copies and shows a lot of the scores that you had in the goals section, but it adds a whole lot more as well. It separates them into 3 areas. So you've got your headline scores, grammar, style, spelling, all separated. Again, all with your target area and where you're currently, what you're currently achieving at the moment. Below that, you've got a whole bunch of sections where your document is looking great. So those are the goals, the targets that you are achieving, you're hitting. And then below that again, you've got areas where your document needs to do work. So We know the setting here is business email. So it's giving me things like customer focus score, sentence length, business jargon. Those are the things I need to work on. Now, you can highlight or you can click, on any of these scores, any of these headings, and it will take you down to the relevant part of the summary report. So the summary report is really, really detailed. And as with all the advice we give around ProWritingAid, you don't need to consume everything in the summary report. There will be a little bit like you don't need to run all of these reports. That is not the intention. But in your first few weeks of using ProWritingAid, build your understanding of where the value is for you. So with the summary report, find the bits that are relevant to your writing. There are parts of this report that are relevant purely to fiction writers, and as business writers, they're not going to be so relevant to you. But readability is key for business writing, and you can see the explanation here is just a really simple image, really simple diagram, showing you a breakdown of your document, paragraph by paragraph, based on whether those paragraphs are easy to read, slightly difficult to read, or very difficult to read. So I have got probably approaching 10% of my paragraphs in this document are very difficult to read. So my readability grade might be okay. It's at the upper edge though. But even though that's the case, I still want to go into it and change some of these difficult paragraphs. I don't want to be putting barriers in the way of my reader. I want to encourage them to reach a decision that's beneficial to me. So I want to make this reading experience as positive and as good as possible. So I'm getting a picture of which other reports I want to run. So let's close the summary report. First one I'm going to focus on is just what we talked about, readability. So it's got a report entirely to itself. And before I do that, just another quick word, just again to reassure you, don't try and run every single report. In most ProWritingAid users, Mike, I think we get to a point where most users are kind of 4 or 5 reports.
Yeah. Usually it's somewhere between 3 and 5. And one of the points to kind of be aware of when you're first using the program is that that area of where your document needs work under the summary report, that area is going to be your best friend, because commonly what is going to happen is because we all tend to write from the same perspective as individuals. You know, you're not going to likely change your writing style drastically from email to email. Therefore, a lot of times you will have difficulty with the same areas over and over again. Now, hopefully with time that will improve and you'll have things like maybe you won't make as many grammar mistakes, maybe you won't make as many spelling mistakes. But for things maybe like readability, for things like sentence length, a lot of this that comes just kind of part and parcel with your writing as an individual, it will note this under where your document needs work, and you'll find out the reports that you commonly need to run. Now, there are some that are just good practice. You know, grammar and spelling are an excellent one for anyone to run. That's why we have it under that key scores metric. The style report can also be helpful if you're trying to make things more readable. So that's another reason we have that one under key scores up at the top. But ultimately, as you use the tool more and more, you'll get used to kind of the main reports you need to run. So you might sit there and go, you know, hey, I'm continually having a problem with my sentence length. Then, hey, that means that probably that sentence length is one of the 3 to 5 reports you need to run. So it's just good to keep that in mind and make it a good practice at first to run that summary report, because it will direct you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, although it's classed as on target, we're at the upper end with readability. So I'm still going to run that report. I also think it's a really useful one to show you guys. So let's run it and see what it says. Some really interesting stats in here. So first of all, look again, all of these reports will open a left-hand kind of sidebar with some statistics, and you can navigate through the issues from here as well as in the document itself. So first of all, I've got an estimated reading time. Then I've got a bunch of readability measures. So you'll probably be familiar with some of these. At ProWritingAid, we look at the ProWritingEdit score. That's how we measure paragraph readability. But we also give a Kincaid grade rating as well, as you can see. And there's a couple of others here that you may be familiar with that you can use as alternatives.
And it's interesting, the Kincaid score does correlate kind of to grade level. So you'll notice in our goals feature, whenever we talk about readability, we say to aim for a goal of about 6 to 10. So that would be a reading grade level of between 6 to 10. This is not to imply that you're writing for a bunch of middle schoolers to early high schoolers. That's simply because in all of the analysis that we've done, we've kind of discovered that easy to read writing falls between those grade levels. Once you're above or around that grade 10, things get a little bit more difficult to follow.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's have a look at what I really want to focus on, which is my very difficult to read paragraph. In fact, in this case, there's only one. And I can navigate to that here just by clicking on this arrow, and it will open or throw up the pop-up over the paragraph. And you can see it gives me a Flesh Reading E score, 44.2. ProWritingAid, we aim for, I think our target is around about between 60 and 70. So I'm short of the target. So what am I going to do about this paragraph? Well, basically, a readability score is measured on the complexity of your sentences. So how many average words per sentence, but also how many average syllables per word. So if I want to improve readability, the simplest way to do it is to reduce the number of words per sentence and reduce the complexity of some of the vocabulary. So cut down some of those complex words into simpler alternatives. Now, I could just look at this paragraph myself and think, okay, yeah, I can see words I can improve here. I can see where I could split sentences into 2 or 3, or I could then run some of the other reports to help me do that. But let's do just that right now. Let's go and have a look at the style report, because that was under target as well. Style report, a little bit like readability. It lists all of my core elements in the left-hand side. I can expand any of those, and you can see I've got readability enhancements, I've got passive verb enhancements, I've got style improvements, so they may relate to custom style guide rules I've made. I've got long subordinate clauses, I've got all sorts of things here. Take time getting to know, once again, what's most useful for you, what's relevant for the kind of writing you're doing and the audience you're writing for. I'm going to tackle some of these first of all. Okay, so thus far, we've already seen an example of thus and removed it. Let's get rid of that. And that, so let's have a look at that. Okay, again, we don't need that. It's superfluous, so we can remove that. Be able to. Okay, let's have a look at where that is. Okay. So it might be able to inform our decision. Well, actually, once again, it's just adding extra verbiage, extra words to our writing. We can remove that without impacting the meaning of the sentence or the paragraph at all. So I'm going to work through readability enhancements, then I'll go to the passive voice, then I'll go to the style guide improvements, and slowly I'm making kind of incremental gains, and they're all going to benefit the document as a whole, but also that readability score.
And ultimately, remember that the kind of notes made under the style report are far more subjective than, say, the ones made under spelling and grammar. So if you have something pop up under spelling and grammar, chances are that's a concrete mistake. With style, however, some of these things will be a touch subjective. So you may look at it and go, you know what, I want to keep the passive voice on that one sentence because I need it to make my point more efficiently, essentially. So there are some cases where some of these things will be used, but it's basically a matter of knowing that you have mastery over that area, which can be helpful with where the in-app learning comes in, everything else.
Yeah, and before we move on, I remember there was one point I wanted to show, which is the kind of business jargon as well. So we've got some style improvements. These are mainly based on business jargon improvements. So you can see the kind of, you'll all probably be familiar with these kind of terms. The kind of terms that when I read them in documents, I kind of raise my eyes to the skies and think, why don't you just say what you mean? Okay, so maybe remove cutting edge, just have groundbreaking. Bandwidth, what does bandwidth actually mean? Let's have a look at that. Okay, simple replacement for bandwidth is capacity. I'm going to make that change. Drill down into, okay, drill down into, simple change to analyze. Again, you may not agree with these. You may have a specific case reason to use, an expression like strike while the iron is hot, but probably not. So you probably make some changes, paradigm shift once again. So you see the kind of things we see there. Decide whether it's relevant for your document or not to make that change.
Because Tom, I
explicit.
suppose if you are a salesperson for an iron company, striking while the iron was hot might be a good bit of jargon to include.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, Mike. Absolutely true. All right, let's move on because I want to take you to one of my favorite reports, which is the sticky sentence report. Let me just hide the semi-sticky sentences so you can see how I can hide some of these features as well if I don't want to clutter up the document. Sticky sentences, so it looks at what we call glue words, and glue words are the 200 most commonly used words in the English language. So they're the kind of prepositions, articles that, they're really important, but they don't actually add meaning to your sentence. They tend to glue the working words together. Now, from our analysis at ProWritingAid, we know that if a sentence has more than 40% of its words made up of glue words, the likelihood is it's sticky. It's going to slow your reader down. And you could say the same thing with fewer words. So it's a great example of where AI is used to highlight potential pitfalls, the kind of things that actually with the human eye, unless you're a trained editor or proofreader, you may not notice at all. Let me give you an example. So here we've got a sentence. There are 2 sticky sentences in this document. Let's go to the first one. Just navigate here. I mean, you can see it open there on the right-hand side anyway, but just to show you the navigation technique. So here's a sticky sentence. Now, it doesn't look like a particularly bad sentence. It's not a really long sentence, but again, it's just about making marginal gains. Almost 62% of the words in this sentence are glue words, and you can see them listed there. Just, wanted to, up, about, the, and last. Now, reading those words out, you've got no understanding of what I'm actually trying to say or the meaning of the sentence. Okay, they are just gluing the working words together. So again, it's a great way to flag up any potential sentences that you could say you could improve just by making much shorter. And if you think about it, I might just change that to just wanted to get in touch or just wanted to follow up. That's probably what I'd use. Just wanted to follow up. Much shorter. Go on. Sorry, Micah.
Just wanted to make the point with our viewers that this is also something that's highly subjective. There are 9 million ways to rewrite a sticky sentence, so everyone is probably going to rewrite a sticky sentence a bit differently. That doesn't mean there's a certain right and wrong. All you're trying to do is keep in mind, how can I eliminate as many of those sticky glue words as possible and get the meaning across in preferably as few words as possible, because we're all in business, we're all incredibly busy. No one really has time to read long emails or long documents.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so sticky sentence one, it's unique to ProWritingAid. I definitely recommend using it and trying it out, seeing what it tells you. But yeah, there are millions of ways you could rewrite any of your sentences. Okay, Micah, any others we wanted to quickly show?
I believe we've covered them between those 3. I think we can probably move on to some of our tools.
Okay, so yeah, let's do that. Let's have a quick look. I mentioned earlier about the ability to kind of customize ProWritingAid and make custom rules. And this is one of the areas where it gets really interesting, particularly if you're interested in language. And you've also got a defined style or tone of voice at your organization. Many of the organizations we work with do. They have spent hours working on a style guide that defines what terms you should use and what you shouldn't use and how you should use the Oxford comma or not. And understandably, they want to be able to automate those rules within ProWritingAid, and that's totally something you can do. So much so, in fact, that even APA, the American Psychological Association, use our style guide tool to custom build or automate all of their style guide rules within their own academic writer tool. Here are some examples. Don't worry about the technical detail of what you can see here. I'll run through a couple of examples. So here's a really simple one to start. Okay, and by the way, I've navigated here by going to my left-hand menu up here. Let me just shut this down. The hamburger menu in the top left corner. Just click on style guides here. Okay. And I can create style guides just for my own writing, just for my documents. I can also create them for my team. So here's my personal style guide rules. If I go down to here, you can see my ProWritingAid style guide rules. If I make a rule here, it's going to apply to everybody in my team. So there's no need to copy and paste the rule. It's automatically updated. Let's start with that simple
And that team
example.
management is specific to ProWritingAid business for anyone who's curious.
That's right. So the style guide interface is a simple 4-field interface. What you need to do is start off with a wrong sentence. Now, let me explain what this user was trying to do, or what we were trying to do for this user. They wanted a rule that highlighted wherever the dollar symbol is used, because it's ambiguous, because they're a financial services client, they need to be specific. Are they talking US dollars, Australian dollars, Canadian dollars, and so on? So it highlights dollars and it recommends USD as the replacement. And so we create 4 text entries. Firstly, a wrong sentence. This could be any sentence as long as it's got the wrong terminology or the wrong word or whatever it is that you're trying to highlight within it. And the analysis tool uses this to test the rule. We then create the match. So this is where we're telling the computer what to look for. And we're saying, find any dollar symbols in this document. And when you find a dollar symbol, offer up the replacement of USD. And then we create a message. So that might be just, remember at ProWritingAid, we use USD rather than the dollar symbol. Test the rule. Rule works okay. Save the rule. Then I go back into my document and run the rule or write the document, and it will show there. And before I go in and actually show you one, let me show you a slightly more complex example, because I think it's probably a slightly better one. So here we have a pharmaceutical client that was fed up with reports that contained the word reagents preceded by the adjective either good or bad. Okay, you shouldn't use good or bad to describe a reagent. They aren't good or bad. They're simply appropriate or inappropriate. So we create the wrong sentence. We create the match. Now here we've got 2 words in brackets beforehand, and that's where we're telling the computer to look for one or other of these bracketed items. So if you find good or bad before reagents, that's a match. But it must be one of these. It can't be none. It must be one of these. And then there's a replacement, and we're saying use appropriate, and then this is called tokenization. So we're basically tokenizing this match. We're saying replace token 1 from the match into the replacement sentence. Tokenization starts at 0, so you're confusing, but your first word is token 0. Your second word is token 1. So here we're saying replace good reagents with appropriate reagents. The @ symbol is just telling the computer that what comes after the @ symbol is going to be a second suggestion. So in the interface, in the pop-up, these are going to be separated into 2 clickable alternatives. And the second one is inappropriate. And again, token 1, so reagents. So I can test the rule, I can save it. Let's actually just copy that, go back into our sample document. Sorry, hang on, let me just go into this one. I'm just going to place this here, run the real-time report, and there you go. It's highlighted. There's my message. There are the 2 alternative suggestions separated by the @ symbol. And it's as simple as that. It does get, or can get, much more complex. You can create custom style guide rules that, for example, help you identify. I'm just going to show you one. Sorry, I'm a bit problem with my screen. But we can create rules that help you identify where to use the Oxford comma. Okay, and as you can see, this gets into a little bit more complex ground. It's where we're using what we call parts of speech tagging, so POS tags. And we're telling the computer to look for combinations of nouns, either nouns, singular or plural, or verbs, separated by a comma, coordinating conjunction, a possible determiner of that verb, and then a final noun, singular, plural, or verb. And so it's looking for sentences where basically we've got a missing comma before this coordinating conjunction. Now, not everybody has the rule that to use the Oxford comma, but if you do, this is a really good one to use. In the replacement, look again, I'm using tokens just to replace the whole string from the match. like for like, but we're introducing this one comma before that coordinating conjunction, so before the and the message, please use the octal comma. So it's starting to get more complex, and you can even use regular expression here to get into the really kind of deep, serious stuff. Now, we have a couple of blog articles that can help you get started with writing style guide rules. I think we're going to share those, or we'll be following up with those. Is that right, Micah?
Those are currently in the chat. If you'd like to learn more about basic and kind of simple style rules, you'll want to check out our Style Guide 101 that covers things like those easier replacements. Like I think we had a brand name that was swapped out. It's University of Kansas instead of Kansas University, correct? Something along those lines. Then, if you're trying to get into more complex rules that involve those parts of speech tags, that involve the tokenization, that may involve regular expression, then you'll want to take a look at our advanced style guide rule creation.
Yeah, that's right. I completely forgot about that one, Micah. Well pointed, well spotted. So it's actually Pennsylvania University. So we've simply created a rule that reversed or swapped the order. The actual name of the organization is not Pennsylvania University, it's University of Pennsylvania. So this rule just swaps or changes that name into the correct version for the customer.
So if you just look at the chat, we have those links available. The Style Guide 101 is linked first, and then the Advanced Style Guide rules are linked second.
Great. Okay, so that's Style Guide rules. I think we'll have a quick look at, we did mention about Teams. I'm just going to very quickly show you ProWritingAid Teams. This is what it looks like. So this is where you have a dashboard that you can manage all of your user licenses within a team. So you can allocate an administrator or multiple administrators, and you can then add or delete users as necessary. So if you've got a rolling team, if you've got people leaving your team and you want to reassign their license, and you can simply highlight a user, remove them, and then go here and invite your new user. So it's a really simple way of managing a multi-license user base. The other thing I was going to point out, I think very quickly, was snippets. Again, excuse my moving around windows here. Something's jammed on my desktop. So snippets are great in terms of being able to create standard chunks of text, so standardized, pre-formatted text, and drop them into any of your documents. So if you give you an example, I have a snippet here that is the email that goes out to all people joining a ProWritingAid business trial. So where I've set up their license activation for their trial. And actually, this is a great point for me to probably segue into showing you our Chrome extension and how that works. So remember what a snippet looks like. Remember how I've simply built the text here. I can format it. I can create this shortcut here. And then let's go over to the Chrome extension and see how that actually looks in practice. So here is the Chrome extension. I'm using a Gmail window as my example. You can see I've got Chrome extension installed up here. I've got checking enabled, text expansion enabled. I've got my settings here once again, so I can do those here. And then I've got highlights within the document, just like I had in the web editor. So this is a real-time checker working in the window immediately, just in the background, doing the spotting the errors, making the suggestions. Okay. If I want to go into the full editor, I simply click on this small dot down here, and it opens the full editor. It takes a couple of seconds to do that. There we go. So you can see the same report, summary report, and so on are available to me here. That's how the Chrome extension works. Now, just want to show you take you back to the point I was making about snippets, because if I go here now and I click with a backslash and then start typing the name of the snippet, so it's immediately starting to look for my snippet. There it is, and it drops the text into the document. So snippets, particularly for customer service teams, HR teams, anyone who's using repetitive paragraphs or sentences, is a real time saver.
And if you'd like a guide to snippets, we're also putting that into the chat right now. That article should be helpful in kind of making your own and the different things that you can do with the editor. It's great to keep in mind that the snippets are all rich text. So if you need to include links, if you need to include formatting, anything like that, as long as you're entering the text into a rich text editor, that formatting, those links, all of that will stay preserved for you.
Right, fantastic. So I mean, that's most of the areas I wanted to cover today. How are we getting on for time? We've got a few minutes.
I think we're doing good. We did have one question come in that asked about what integrations we have available. So I think, kind of offshooting off of just leaving our Chrome integration, we might want to show them the integrations page, maybe.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just go into ProWritingAid.com. So from our homepage, you can reach our integrations in many ways. You can see them right up the top here listed. I can click on any of these to go through to the specific integration to the download page, or I can just navigate down to the bottom of the homepage and I've got them all listed here. Okay, click on any of those. Let's say I want to use the Google Docs add-on. Here we go. Here's the relevant page. I can install it from here. Really simple process. If you're a free user, you can get a 1-week trial for any of these. So in fact, all of the integrations work in that way. And you'll be able to upgrade at the end of your trial if you like what you see and like what you use. We've even got, for any of you who kind of maybe using or building your own platforms out there, we have a couple of APIs as well. So we have a full API that you can integrate with your own platform. And we have also what's called what we call Beyond Grammar. So it's this grammar checking component. So that's a plugin, really simple plugin that just serves up the real-time checker for you. If you're using any rich text editor like TinyMCE, Froala, CK Editor, any of those, we have versions for all of those. So in the text windows in your web page, you can integrate real-time checking really, really simply.
Mm-hmm. And Tom, you actually just hit on our next question, which was going to be about, do we have an API integration? So
yeah, there we go. So I recommend if you're kind of into that, so if that's what you're kind of looking for, click on the page. You'll find all the documentation here. So go through the documentation page. You can see the SDKs we make available in the documentation page in GitHub. It's going to open. I can't tell if this is open somewhere else. No, there we go. Okay, so I can look at the kind of reports I can run. I can list all the reports available to me. Obviously, with an API, there's some configuration work to do on your part, and everybody uses it in different ways. But it can be a really powerful way of building in some of those deep reports into your tool. If you're just looking for real-time checking, right, which is making constant small API calls, then I recommend Beyond Grammar instead. Our full API is great if you're just wanting to offer the chance to run individual reports. But yeah, Beyond Grammar is where to look. And I'll take you back there if you're just looking for a plugin. And here you can see, I'll take you through to an example. Here's an example. So here's our one powered by TinyMCE. This is what it looks like. This is Beyond Grammar working just like you saw in the web editor. It's pointing out grammar, style, spelling, and passive voice issues. Okay.
And Tom, I think we've got just one more kind of about on-premise deployments as far as when those are needed for certain companies.
Yeah, great point. Actually, we've skipped completely over that, which is a really important point. Our approach to security and privacy is at the top of our kind of agenda, our list of priorities. So for those of you who are maybe with organizations who are very concerned about security and quite rightly so, let me just explain before I go into kind of an on-premise, a bit more detail about on-premise options. How we handle your data is very important to us. So we use Microsoft Azure as our our host, our cloud hosting provider. So they're obviously one of the top 2 in the world that offer cloud hosting systems. We analyze, or we host our servers are hosted, sorry, in the North US. And we encrypt data in the transmission. Now, once we analyze your data, it's deleted. So we do not store your data. There is no data persistence whatsoever. We also don't have any rights to use your data. And this is really important. We don't use your data to train or to build our machine learning models. We do that with data we acquire from professional editors. So you don't have to hand over the rights to your data at any point. So our cloud solution, which is what 99% of our users use, is incredibly secure and fit for purpose. However, we do offer on-premise deployments. They are a kind of a premium, so we do charge for that, obviously, but you can work with us to understand which is your preferred client, so your preferred integration, and whether and we can build an on-premise version of that we deliver to you that is run entirely on your data center. It's the choice that many large financial services and law firm clients we work with choose. But like I say, for 99% of our clients, our cloud service solution is more than adequate.
Well, Tom, I think that covers all of our Q&A questions. I think we can go ahead and wrap things up for today. Again, if you have any questions that we were not able to answer, please feel free to email us at hello@ProWritingAid.com. Again, HELLO@ProWritingAid.com. And we hope all of you have a wonderful day, rest of your evening, wherever you are. And everyone, good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks all. See you again soon.